More than 200 million years ago, all the continents were joined together into one large landmass called Pangaea. This single landmass affected the planet's climate, geography, and the way living things were distributed across the Earth. As Pangaea formed and later began to break apart, it created changes in temperature, rainfall, and environments. These changes influenced how plants and animals lived, moved, and adapted. During this time, early reptiles evolved into dinosaurs, leading to the beginning of the Age of Dinosaurs, when dinosaurs became the dominant animals on land. So how did these environmental changes lead to the rise and spread of dinosaurs? The formation of Pangaea was the result of deep, powerful forces acting within the Earth over an extremely long period of time, gradually bringing together nearly all of the planet's land into one huge, continuous supercontinent. This process did not happen in a straight or simple way. Instead, it unfolded through a long chain of slow movements, collisions, separations, and reconnections, driven by the restless nature of the Earth's outer shell and the heat that rises from its interior. At the heart of this process lies plate tectonics, which explains how the Earth's surface is divided into large pieces called plates. These plates include both continents and the ocean floor, and they float on a deeper layer of the Earth known as the mantle. Although the mantle is made of solid rock, the intense heat inside the planet causes it to behave in a slow, flowing manner over very long periods of time. This slow flow creates movement that pushes and pulls the plates above it, causing them to drift across the Earth's surface. The movement of these plates is extremely slow, often only a few centimeters in a year, yet over millions of years, even such small movements can lead to massive changes. Entire oceans can open and close, continents can move across great distances, and mountain ranges can rise where plates collide. It was through this slow but constant motion that the separate pieces of land gradually came together to form Pangaea. Before Pangaea existed, the Earth had already gone through earlier stages where land masses joined and separated. One of the most important earlier supercontinents was Rodinia. Rodinia formed hundreds of millions of years before Pangaea and later broke apart due to forces within the Earth. When it split, it created smaller land masses that began to drift away from each other. These fragments did not remain separate forever. Over time, the same forces that caused them to break apart began to pull them back together again. As these land fragments moved, they were carried by the plates beneath them across vast distances. Some moved toward each other, while others drifted apart. When continents moved closer together, they did not easily slide under one another like ocean plates sometimes do. Instead, because continental crust is lighter and thicker, the edges of the continents crumpled and folded when they collided. This process created huge mountain ranges and helped bind the continents together. This process of mountain building is known as orogeny. During the formation of Pangaea, several major orogenic events took place. These events were not short-lived. They lasted for millions of years, slowly raising massive mountain belts that stretched across vast regions. Some of these ancient mountains were as large as, or even larger than, the tallest mountains we see today, although time has worn them down. One of the most important stages in the formation of Pangaea involved the coming together of several large land masses. These included what would later become North America, Europe, Asia, Africa, South America, Antarctica, and Australia. Each of these land masses had its own history of movement and collision, but gradually they began to join together. For example, the landmass that would become North America collided with parts of Europe and Africa. This collision created a massive mountain system that once stretched across these regions. Evidence of this ancient collision can still be seen today in the rocks and structures found in places that are now far apart but were once connected. Similar collisions took place in other parts of the world, slowly linking more and more land together. As more continents joined, the shape of the Earth's surface changed dramatically. Ocean basins were squeezed and reduced in size, while large areas of land became connected. Eventually, nearly all of the Earth's continental crust was gathered into a single, enormous landmass. This was Pangaea, a supercontinent that covered a vast portion of the planet's surface. Surrounding Pangaea was a huge global ocean known as Panthalassa. This ocean covered most of the Earth and was far larger than any ocean that exists today. There were also smaller seas and inland bodies of water within Pangaea, but the majority of the planet's water was concentrated in this single, massive ocean. The existence of such a large supercontinent had a strong effect on the Earth's climate. Areas located far from the coast experienced very different conditions compared to those near the ocean. Inland regions were often dry because moisture from the ocean could not easily reach them. This likely led to the formation of large deserts across the interior of Pangaea. In contrast, coastal regions had more access to water and experienced milder climates. The arrangement of land and sea also affected the movement of ocean currents. With most of the land gathered into one place, ocean circulation patterns were very different from what they are today. These patterns influence how heat is distributed across the planet, so changes in ocean currents can lead to changes in climate. As a result, the formation of Pangaea played a major role in shaping global weather patterns. The joining of continents also had a powerful effect on life. Before the formation of Pangaea, many species were isolated on separate land masses. As the continents came together, these species were able to spread into new areas. This led to new interactions between different forms of life, including competition and adaptation. Some species thrived in the new environments, while others struggled to survive. Fossils provide important evidence for the existence of Pangaea and for the way it formed. The same types of fossils have been found on continents that are now widely separated. One well-known example is the reptile Mesosaurus. Fossils of this animal have been found in both South America and Africa. Because Mesosaurus lived in freshwater and could not have crossed a vast ocean, its presence on both continents suggests that these lands were once joined. Other fossils, including plants and different animals, show similar patterns. The distribution of these fossils helps scientists reconstruct how the continents were arranged in the past. Rocks also provide important clues. Similar rock formations can be found on continents that are now far apart, indicating that they were once part of the same landmass. The idea that continents could move across the Earth's surface was once difficult for many people to accept. It was strongly supported by Alfred Wegener, who proposed the theory of continental drift. He suggested that the continents were once joined together and later drifted apart. Although his ideas were not widely accepted at first, later discoveries about the structure of the ocean floor and the behavior of tectonic plates provided strong evidence to support his theory. The formation of Pangaea reached its peak during the Permian period, when nearly all of the Earth's land was united. At this time, the supercontinent was at its largest and most complete form. It stretched from near one pole to the other, covering a vast area and creating a world that was very different from the one we know today. The interior of Pangaea was likely a harsh environment in many places. With little access to moisture, large regions may have been dominated by dry conditions. Temperature differences between day and night could have been extreme, especially in areas far from the moderating influence of the ocean. These conditions would have influenced the types of plants and animals that could survive there. Despite these challenges, life continued to evolve and adapt. The formation of Pangaea created new habitats and opportunities for life to spread and change. It also set the stage for future developments, including the rise of new groups of organisms that would later dominate the Earth. The same forces that brought the continents together eventually began to pull them apart. Cracks formed within the supercontinent as the plates beneath it continued to move. Magma from the mantle rose through these cracks, creating new ocean crust and pushing the land apart. Over time, these cracks widened into new oceans, and the continents began to drift away from each other once again. This cycle of continents coming together and breaking apart is known as the supercontinent cycle. Pangaea is one of the most recent examples of this cycle, but it is not unique. The Earth has gone through similar cycles in the past, and it is likely that it will continue to do so in the future. The Earth's surface is not fixed. Instead, it is made of enormous pieces of solid rock called tectonic plates, which float on a softer, slowly moving layer of the Earth known as the mantle. These plates are constantly shifting, though their movement is so slow that it is almost impossible to notice in a human lifetime. They drift at rates comparable to the growth of a fingernail, a few centimeters per year, but over millions of years, these movements can change the entire face of the planet. The movement of these plates is driven by heat deep within the Earth. The planet's core is extremely hot, producing convection currents in the mantle. hot material rises toward the surface, while cooler material sinks, creating a slow but steady circulation. Gravity and the pull of sinking plates into the mantle, a process known as subduction, also contribute to the motion of these plates. These forces are invisible but powerful, slowly pushing continents across oceans, causing collisions and opening new seas. More than 300 million years ago, during the late Paleozoic era, the continents were not arranged as they are today. They were separate landmasses scattered across the globe, divided by vast oceans that sometimes contained shallow, warm seas filled with life. Over tens of millions of years, these continents moved steadily, carried by the forces of plate tectonics. Collisions between these landmasses created mountain ranges, some of which reached heights comparable to the highest mountains today. The movement was gradual, almost imperceptible, but it reshaped the Earth on a continental scale. Eventually, these movements brought most of the continents together, forming a single enormous supercontinent called Pangaea. This supercontinent stretched from the northern pole to the southern pole, containing nearly all the Earth's land in one continuous expanse. The process of forming Pangaea was complex and involved multiple collisions between different continental blocks. For example, what is now North America collided with Europe and parts of northern Africa, pushing up huge mountain ranges in the regions that would later become the Appalachians and other ranges. Similarly, South America gradually collided with Africa, closing the oceans that once separated them. India, which was then an isolated landmass in the southern hemisphere, slowly moved northward and eventually collided with what is now Asia, setting the stage for the creation of future mountain ranges. These massive movements were not sudden, but happened over millions of years. Each collision compressed the Earth's crust, causing folding, faulting, and volcanic activity. Rivers and seas shifted, climates changed, and life adapted to new conditions. Plate tectonics did not only bring land together, it also created internal stress and tension within the supercontinent. As the plates collided and merged, heat and pressure built up beneath the surface. Some areas experienced volcanic eruptions, while others saw earthquakes as the crust adjusted to the enormous forces acting on it. The interior of Pangaea became drier and more extreme in climate because it was far from the oceans that moderated temperatures. Vast deserts formed in some regions, while other areas experienced seasonal rains and monsoons. These climatic changes had profound effects on the plants and animals living on Pangaea. Species adapted to the new environments, some thriving in the arid interior, while others remained near the coasts where conditions were more stable. While Pangaea represented a time when the continents were joined, the forces of plate tectonics continued to work beneath the surface. The same processes that brought the continents together eventually led to their separation. Around 200 million years ago, during the early Mesozoic era, Pangaea began to break apart. The enormous landmass started to split along weaknesses in the crust, forming rift valleys and new ocean basins. These rifts grew larger over time, as magma from the mantle pushed up to create new crust, slowly widening the gaps between the continents. The splitting of Pangaea marked the beginning of the formation of the Atlantic Ocean, which expanded as the Americas moved away from Europe and Africa. Similarly, the separation of other regions set the stage for the formation of the Indian Ocean and the Southern Ocean. The breakup of Pangaea was not a uniform process. Different parts of the supercontinent drifted apart at different rates. For example, the land that would become Africa and South America separated first, gradually forming the Atlantic Ocean over tens of millions of years. India moved rapidly northward, colliding with Asia much later, leading to the rise of the Himalayas. Australia drifted away from Antarctica, opening the Southern Ocean and altering global ocean currents. Even as the continents separated, they continued to be shaped by tectonic forces. Mountain ranges rose, volcanoes erupted, and earthquakes shook the land, showing that plate tectonics remained a dominant force shaping the Earth's surface. The movement of tectonic plates also had a significant effect on the global climate and the evolution of life. When Pangaea was intact, the supercontinent's interior was far from the moderating influence of the oceans. Summers were extremely hot, winters were cold, and rainfall was scarce in many regions. These conditions created deserts and dry plains, where only specially adapted plants and animals could survive. As the continents drifted apart, oceans flooded into the rifts, moderating the climate and creating new coastal environments. Shallow seas spread across previously dry land, allowing marine life to flourish and new ecosystems to develop. The separation of land masses also created isolated habitats, where plants and animals could evolve independently. Over millions of years, this led to a remarkable diversification of species, including the rise of dinosaurs, mammals, and many types of plants. Understanding the movement of plates also explains why certain geological features appear far from their original locations. Rocks that formed together on one continent can now be found thousands of kilometers apart on separate continents. Fossils of identical species, once living in the same area, are now discovered on different continents, providing evidence that the land was once joined. For instance, fossils of the freshwater reptile Mesosaurus are found in both South America and Africa, even though these continents are now separated by the Atlantic Ocean. Similarly, plant fossils such as Glossopteris appear on several southern continents, including Africa, South America, India, and Antarctica, showing that these landmasses were once connected. The study of plate tectonics also reveals the forces behind earthquakes and volcanoes. Earthquakes occur when the stress accumulated along plate boundaries is suddenly released, shaking the ground and sometimes causing massive destruction. Volcanoes form when magma from the mantle rises through cracks in the crust, often at divergent boundaries where plates are moving apart, or at subduction zones where one plate is forced beneath another. Both processes were active during the formation and breakup of Pangaea, shaping its mountains, valleys, and coastlines. Some of the largest volcanic eruptions in Earth's history occurred during these times, contributing gases and ash to the atmosphere and influencing the climate on a global scale. The formation and breakup of Pangaea also had long-term effects on the oceans and currents. When the supercontinent existed, it blocked the flow of ocean currents, creating vast, stagnant seas in some regions. As the continents separated, new ocean basins allowed currents to flow freely around the planet. These currents transported heat from the equator to the poles, helping to stabilize global climate over long periods. The separation of continents also created new coastlines, shallow seas, and continental shelves, which became rich habitats for marine life. Coral reefs, fish, and other organisms thrived in these areas, increasing the diversity of life in the oceans. Even today, the legacy of Pangaea can be seen in the arrangement of continents, mountain ranges, and ocean basins. The continents continue to drift at rates of a few centimeters per year, driven by the same forces of plate tectonics that formed Pangaea hundreds of millions of years ago. North America continues to move westward, slowly widening the Atlantic Ocean, while the Pacific Ocean shrinks as subduction consumes its crust. Africa moves northeast, pushing against Europe and Asia, raising mountain ranges such as the Alps. India continues its journey northward, causing earthquakes and volcanic activity as it collides with Asia. Plate tectonics remains a dynamic, ongoing process, shaping the Earth in ways that affect everything from the formation of mountains to the distribution of species. The movement of tectonic plates has also influenced the evolution of life on Earth. When continents are joined, species can spread across vast land masses, mixing and competing in shared ecosystems. When continents separate, populations become isolated, leading to the development of new species through evolution. This process, called vicariance, has been crucial in shaping the diversity of life on Earth. Many of the species alive today have ancestors that were affected by the formation and breakup of Pangaea. Dinosaurs, for instance, evolved and spread across the supercontinent, only to diversify further as the land masses split apart. Similarly, mammals and other animals were influenced by these shifts, finding new habitats and evolving in response to changing climates and landscapes. In addition to its effects on life and climate, plate tectonics explains the distribution of minerals, rocks, and natural resources. Mountains formed during the collisions of continents often contain rich deposits of metals, such as gold, copper, and iron. Volcanoes produce fertile soils and mineral-rich deposits, while rift valleys and oceanic spreading centers create new crust with unique chemical compositions. Understanding these processes has allowed humans to locate and utilize resources that are essential for civilization, from metals for tools and construction to fertile soils for agriculture. The study of plate tectonics has transformed the way scientists understand Earth. Before the concept of tectonic plates, the movement of continents was a mystery. People noticed that continents seemed to fit together like puzzle pieces, or that fossils of the same species appeared on different continents, but they could not explain why. The discovery of plate tectonics in the 20th century provided a unifying theory that explained these observations. It showed that the Earth's crust is divided into plates that move, interact, and reshape the surface over millions of years. This understanding has allowed scientists to reconstruct the formation and breakup of Pangaea in great detail, using evidence from rocks, fossils, mountain ranges, and ocean basins. Pangaea itself existed for tens of millions of years, roughly from 300 million to 200 million years ago. During this time, it had a profound impact on the Earth's environment, climate, and life. Its formation brought continents together, creating mountain ranges, deserts, and large inland seas. Its breakup opened new oceans, altered currents, and created new habitats for plants and animals. Throughout all these changes, plate tectonics was the engine driving the movements, collisions, and separations. Even after Pangaea disappeared, the forces of plate tectonics continued to shape the Earth. The Earth's surface, hundreds of millions of years ago, looked very different from the way it does today. Continents were not connected into the single massive landmass known as Pangaea. Instead, they were separate pieces floating across a vast and ever-changing ocean. These landmasses drifted slowly, pushed and pulled by enormous forces deep within the Earth's crust. Life on the planet adapted to this shifting world, creating ecosystems that were as varied and strange as the continents themselves. Oceans stretched across most of the planet, filled with creatures that had no modern equivalents, while the lands were rugged, volcanic, and largely unexplored by life. During the Cambrian period, approximately 545 million years ago to 490 million years ago, life in the oceans exploded into diversity. This time is known to scientists as the Cambrian explosion because so many new forms of life appeared in such a relatively short period. The seas were crowded with trilobites, which were arthropods with segmented bodies and complex eyes. Early mollusks floated and crawled along the ocean floor, while primitive echinoderms, ancestors of modern starfish, clung to rocks or moved slowly in search of food. Tiny algae drifted in the sunlit waters, forming the base of a food chain that allowed more complex creatures to thrive. On land, however, life was almost non-existent. Bare rock, volcanic ash, and sandy shores dominated the continents, with only the occasional microscopic plant or fungus beginning to test the possibilities of life outside the water. The Ordovician period, which lasted from approximately 490 million years ago to 444 million years ago, brought changes to both the oceans and the continents. Coral-like reefs began to emerge, creating habitats for creatures such as brachiopods, bryozoans, and early types of cephalopods. The first fish, jawless and armored, appeared in shallow seas, adding a new dimension to predator-prey relationships. The continents themselves were scattered widely and separated by enormous oceans, so ecosystems were isolated. This meant that different areas developed very different species, creating unique pockets of biodiversity. In some regions, the land remained barren, while in others, primitive plants slowly started forming mats over rocks, beginning the long process of soil formation. Earth's climate during this time was variable, with some regions experiencing mild, wet conditions suitable for plant growth and others remaining dry and inhospitable. The Silurian period, approximately 444 million years ago to 419 million years ago, saw the first major colonization of land by plants and animals. Small vascular plants appeared, capable of transporting water and nutrients, which allowed them to grow larger and spread further across the continents. The seas continued to teem with life. Coral reefs became more extensive, and the first jawed fish evolved, giving rise to faster predators. In some shallow waters, early arthropods began exploring the land, venturing onto mudflats and shorelines in search of food. These pioneers set the stage for the evolution of more complex ecosystems on land, creating the first link between marine and terrestrial life. The continents were still drifting slowly, and their positions determined ocean currents, which in turn influenced global climate patterns. During the Devonian period, which lasted from approximately 419 million years ago to 354 million years ago, life on Earth became even more diverse. Oceans were dominated by large fish, some of which had primitive lungs, and could survive in oxygen-poor waters, hinting at the eventual move to land. Coral reefs flourished, providing shelter and food for countless smaller organisms. On land, plants evolved leaves and stronger stems, allowing them to grow taller and form the first forests. Early insects and arthropods became more common, crawling among the plants and shaping the ecosystems in new ways. Swamps appeared in low-lying areas, creating wetland habitats where plants, fungi, and early amphibians could thrive. These changes transformed the continents, making them more hospitable for life and gradually preparing the world for the rise of larger, more complex creatures. By the Carboniferous period, from approximately 354 million years ago to 290 million years ago, life on land had dramatically changed. Vast forests of giant ferns, horsetails, and club mosses covered much of the continents, producing enormous amounts of oxygen and creating an environment rich in plant material. Insects grew to enormous sizes due to the high oxygen content of the atmosphere, with dragonflies having wingspans of nearly 75 centimeters, far larger than anything seen today. Early amphibians dominated freshwater environments, while the first reptiles appeared, capable of surviving in drier areas. The continents were still separate, with large seas and inland lakes providing habitats for aquatic life, while the land hosted sprawling forests and river systems. Coal beds formed from the accumulation of plant material in swamps, leaving a geological record that tells us about the richness of life during this time. In the Permian period, approximately 290 million years ago to 252 million years ago, life continued to evolve, and the continents began moving closer together. Reptiles diversified, including the first large herbivorous forms that grazed on the abundant plant life. Predatory species also evolved, creating new dynamics between hunters and prey. The climate became more extreme in some regions, with deserts expanding and glaciation occurring in the southern continents. These conditions forced plants and animals to adapt to new environmental pressures, shaping the ecosystems that existed just before the formation of Pangaea. Oceans remained vibrant with life, including various types of fish, ammonites, and other invertebrates, while shallow seas supported extensive reef systems. During all these periods, the separation of continents played a critical role in shaping life. Isolated landmasses led to unique evolutionary paths, with species adapting to local conditions without interference from populations on other continents. Mountain ranges formed where landmasses collided, creating diverse habitats ranging from lowlands to highlands. Volcanic activity added nutrients to soils, but could also cause local extinctions, showing the delicate balance that life had to maintain. Rivers and lakes provided freshwater habitats, while coastal areas offered abundant food and protection for early amphibians and reptiles. The diversity of life before Pangaea demonstrates how the Earth's ecosystems were intricately connected to the movements of the continents, climate changes, and the availability of land and water. The oceans before Pangaea were vast and full of life, but they were also shaped by the shifting continents. Ocean currents moved differently than today, influencing temperature and nutrient distribution, which in turn affected marine life. Coral reefs and shallow seas were hotspots for biodiversity, while deep ocean areas remained largely unexplored by complex life. Fish evolved into many forms, some capable of moving between freshwater and saltwater, while invertebrates dominated both shallow and deep waters. Plankton flourished, providing the base of the food chain for many species, and early predators developed strategies to hunt effectively in these environments. Life on land was still limited compared to the oceans, but it was rapidly diversifying. Plants evolved increasingly complex structures, allowing them to capture more sunlight and survive in drier regions. Forests began forming in some areas, creating microhabitats for insects, amphibians, and early reptiles. The atmosphere was changing as well, with oxygen levels fluctuating due to plant activity, which in turn affected the size and activity levels of animals. Soil formation was a slow but ongoing process, aided by plant roots and the decay of organic material. These changes set the stage for the dramatic ecological transformations that would follow when the continents began merging into the supercontinent Pangaea. By the end of the Permian period, just before the continents fully merged, the world was a patchwork of separate ecosystems, each unique in its species composition and environmental conditions. The continents were on a slow collision course, with the forces of plate tectonics gradually pushing them together. Life had adapted to both the isolation and the connections between land masses, resulting in a rich tapestry of plants, animals, and microorganisms. The oceans teemed with diverse forms of life, while the land hosted sprawling forests, rivers, and deserts. These pre-Pangean ecosystems were the foundation upon which the next era of life would build, setting the stage for the age of reptiles, the rise of the first dinosaurs, and the eventual unification of Earth's continents. Understanding life before Pangaea allows us to see how the planet's history is interconnected with the evolution of life. The separation of continents created isolated laboratories for evolution, where species could adapt to local conditions without interference from distant populations. Changes in climate, ocean currents, and volcanic activity forced life to continually adapt, leading to the extraordinary diversity seen in the fossil record. Plants and animals were experimenting with new ways to survive on land, preparing ecosystems for the even more dramatic changes that would come with the formation of Pangaea. The pre-Pangean world also shows us how fragile and resilient life can be. Mass extinctions occurred, wiping out large numbers of species, but life always found a way to recover and diversify again. Each extinction event reset the stage, allowing new forms to emerge, occupy empty niches, and flourish. In some ways, the story of life before Pangaea is a story of experimentation, nature testing different strategies, some of which would survive for millions of years, while others disappeared into the depths of time. The climate of Pangaea, the immense supercontinent that existed around 320 to 200 million years ago, was unlike anything we experience on Earth today. Imagine a single landmass stretching from pole to pole, so vast that the distance from the middle of the continent to the nearest ocean could have been thousands of miles. This enormous scale had a profound influence on the climate, producing extreme and often harsh weather patterns that shaped the landscapes, rivers, and life that thrived during this time. Unlike modern continents, which are smaller and more affected by the moderating influence of nearby oceans, Pangaea's interior was trapped far from the sea, leading to a climate that could swing between intense heat in the summer and bitter cold in the winter, and that suffered from prolonged dry seasons that could last for months at a time. The very size and shape of Pangaea played a central role in creating its extreme climate. Because the supercontinent was so large, much of its interior was far from the ocean, the source of moisture for rain and the stabilizing influence that moderates temperatures. Today, places near oceans tend to have milder climates. Summers are cooler and winters are warmer because water heats and cools more slowly than land. But for regions deep inside Pangaea, this natural buffering was absent. The interior experienced what scientists call a continental climate, where temperatures could soar during the day and season after season could bring intense heat in the summer and deep cold in the winter. In some areas, the summer heat may have been so intense that rivers evaporated quickly, soil dried and cracked, and the air shimmered with a dry, almost desert-like heat. In the winter, those same areas could be exposed to cold winds from the poles, freezing lakes and coating the land in frost, demonstrating the kind of temperature swings that modern humans would find challenging to endure. Adding to this extreme climate was the latitude of different regions of Pangaea. Because the supercontinent stretched from near the equator to close to the poles, it contained nearly every climate type imaginable, though many were harsher than those we see today. Near the equator, the climate was often hot and dry, with deserts sprawling across vast regions. Some scientists estimate that deserts of Pangaea may have covered millions of square miles in what is now North America and Northern Africa. These equatorial deserts were not like the small deserts of today that are cooled by ocean breezes. They were vast expanses of scorching, sun-baked land where rainfall was rare and only specially adapted plants could survive. Meanwhile, in higher latitudes closer to the poles, winters were long and cold, with snow and ice accumulating in places that might now be temperate forests. The combination of extreme heat in the interior, dryness near the equator, and cold near the poles made Pangaea a world of contrasts, one in which organisms needed to adapt to survive in environments that could be both unforgiving and unpredictable. Another major factor in Pangaea's climate was the seasonal variation caused by the tilt of the Earth. Just as today, the Earth was tilted on its axis, producing the familiar cycle of seasons. However, On a landmass as enormous as Pangaea, these seasonal changes were exaggerated. During summer, the interior regions of the continent could heat up dramatically because the sun's rays struck the land directly and there was little moisture to absorb or carry away the heat. Rivers and lakes could shrink or disappear entirely, and vegetation had to endure prolonged periods of dryness, a challenge that would have shaped the evolution of many plant species. In winter, the same regions experienced bitter cold, and winds blowing from polar regions could bring freezing temperatures, snow, and ice far into the continent. This seasonal swing between extreme heat and freezing cold was unlike what most animals and plants experience today and required remarkable adaptations to survive. Rainfall patterns on Pangaea were also affected by the supercontinent's immense size. In modern times, rainfall is heavily influenced by proximity to oceans, prevailing winds, and mountain ranges. On Pangaea, the vast interior regions were too far from oceans to receive consistent rainfall, which produced large deserts and semi-arid regions. Some areas may have gone for months without any significant precipitation, leading to what modern scientists call mega-seasons, periods of prolonged drought or wetness. The lack of rain not only influenced the types of plants that could grow, but also the animals that could survive in these regions. Many plants evolved to store water or to survive long periods without it, while animals developed behaviors to cope with drought, such as burrowing or migrating to areas with more reliable water sources. Mountains on Pangaea further influenced the climate. The supercontinent was not flat. Tectonic forces created massive mountain ranges, some reaching heights comparable to the Himalayas of today. These mountains affected wind patterns and rainfall, producing rain shadows in certain regions, where moist air was blocked and could not reach areas behind the mountains, intensifying dryness. Conversely, areas on the windward side of mountains might have received more rainfall than the surrounding land. These mountainous effects, combined with the continent's vast size, created a patchwork of climates ranging from hyper-arid deserts to seasonal forests and floodplains, each with its own challenges for life. The heat of Pangaea's interior was amplified by the supercontinent's limited coastline. Oceans act as a moderating force because they absorb heat during summer and release it during winter. But in Pangaea, the distance from the interior to the nearest ocean could have been over 3,000 miles, meaning there was nothing to temper the scorching summer heat or the cold winter nights. This made central areas of Pangaea hotter in summer than any modern desert and colder in winter than most current continental interiors. In addition, the air above these regions was often dry, which increased the evaporation rate and further reduced the availability of water, intensifying the challenge for life. Climate models developed by scientists show that Pangaea may have experienced what we now call monsoonal circulation, a pattern in which seasonal winds change direction with the seasons, bringing heavy rains in one part of the year and extreme dryness in another. During summer, warm air would rise over the continent, pulling moisture-laden winds from the oceans toward the interior, occasionally producing heavy rains and floods. In winter, these winds would reverse, blowing dry air from the continent toward the oceans, leaving the land parched. This seasonal rhythm created distinct wet and dry periods, influencing the growth of plants, the availability of water, and the movement patterns of animals that depended on these seasonal resources. Fossil evidence from Pangaea supports this picture of extreme and variable climate. Sedimentary rocks, which form from the accumulation of sand, silt, and mud, often reveal layers of dried-up riverbeds, ancient sand dunes, and evidence of periodic flooding, showing that the climate was not only hot and dry, but also prone to sudden changes. Fossilized plants also indicate adaptations to extreme conditions, such as thick leaves to prevent water loss, deep roots to reach underground moisture, and seasonal shedding of leaves to conserve water during dry periods. Similarly, fossils of amphibians, reptiles, and early mammals suggest adaptations to cope with temperature extremes and varying water availability, from burrowing to avoid heat to migrating long distances to find water. In addition to heat and dryness, Pangaea's climate may have included periods of intense storms. While the supercontinent's size reduced the influence of oceans on the interior, the edges of Pangaea were still close to large bodies of water. Tropical storms or early forms of hurricanes may have formed near the coasts, occasionally bringing torrential rains far inland through river valleys and lowlands. These sudden bursts of water would have temporarily transformed deserts into lush oases, creating brief but vital opportunities for life to thrive and reproduce before the heat and dryness returned. The extreme climate of Pangaea had profound effects on the evolution of life. Organisms had to develop specialized strategies to survive in regions that could be scorching, freezing, wet, or dry, often all within the same year. Plants evolved deep root systems and thick, waxy leaves to conserve water, while animals developed behavioral and physiological adaptations to avoid heat and cold, such as nocturnal lifestyles or burrowing. Predators and prey alike were shaped by these environmental pressures, with large migrations, specialized feeding habits, and seasonal breeding patterns emerging as responses to the harsh and fluctuating climate. Pangaea's climate also influenced the distribution of ecosystems. Near the equator, dry deserts dominated much of the landscape, while seasonal forests, swamps, and river systems flourished in areas that received occasional rainfall. In higher latitudes, conifer forests, ferns, and other hardy plants could survive the cold winters and shorter growing seasons. The harshness of the interior regions encouraged the development of corridors along river valleys and coastal regions, where life could persist more reliably, creating a patchwork of ecological hotspots separated by vast, sparsely populated deserts. Volcanic activity and atmospheric composition further complicated the climate. During the formation and existence of Pangaea, volcanic eruptions released large amounts of carbon dioxide and other gases into the atmosphere, which could have contributed to periods of global warming. At times, greenhouse conditions may have amplified the heat of the interior regions, while shifts in atmospheric circulation could have led to droughts or unseasonably wet periods. The combination of these factors produced a dynamic climate system that was constantly in flux, with long-term trends of heat and dryness punctuated by shorter-term variations that challenged the survival of life on the supercontinent. Ice sheets and polar climates also played a role. Although Pangaea is often associated with extreme heat in its interior, the polar regions may have supported ice caps and glaciers, particularly during cooler periods in the late Paleozoic and early Mesozoic eras. These ice sheets contributed to global climate patterns, affecting wind systems and sea levels, and provided a source of cold, dry air that could move toward the equator during winter months. The interaction between polar ice and tropical heat created additional extremes, with some regions experiencing dramatic seasonal contrasts in temperature and precipitation. The interplay between land, water, and atmosphere on Pangaea created a climate system that was highly variable and often extreme. Rivers could flood during sudden storms, only to dry up in the long, scorching summer months. Forests could flourish during wet periods, only to be reduced to sparse woodlands during dry spells. Animals had to be incredibly adaptable, evolving strategies to cope with shifting food and water availability, temperature extremes, and the ever-present threat of drought or frost. These pressures drove innovation in survival strategies, from migration to burrowing, from storing food to altering reproductive cycles, and played a major role in shaping the ecosystems that would eventually give rise to the Age of Dinosaurs. The Triassic period, which began around 252 million years ago and lasted until roughly 200 million years ago, marked one of the most important chapters in the history of life on Earth. It was a time of recovery, renewal, and dramatic change, following one of the most catastrophic events our planet has ever known, the Permian-Triassic extinction, which occurred about 253 million years ago. This extinction wiped out an estimated 90% of marine species and 70% of terrestrial species, leaving vast stretches of land and sea almost empty, a world in which life had to start anew. In the aftermath of this great extinction, the supercontinent Pangaea, which had formed over the preceding tens of millions of years, dominated the planet. Pangaea was an enormous landmass that stretched from the northern polar regions to the southern polar regions, combining almost all of Earth's continents into a single massive unit. Its formation created unique environmental conditions that would prove crucial in shaping the course of evolution, including the rise of the earliest dinosaurs. The landscape of Pangaea during the early Triassic was harsh, extreme, and unlike anything we see on Earth today. Because it was a supercontinent, its interior regions were located far from the moderating influence of the oceans, which led to a climate characterized by extreme temperatures and seasonal swings. Summers in the interior could be scorching, with temperatures rising well above what most modern animals could tolerate, while winters were cold and dry. This combination of heat and dryness created deserts and semi-arid plains that stretched across vast areas. Meanwhile, along the coasts and the edges of Pangaea, the climate was more temperate and humid, influenced by the nearby oceans. The supercontinent's immense size also altered wind patterns, rainfall distribution, and ocean currents, all of which contributed to the distinctive climates of the Triassic. Rivers, lakes, and seasonal floodplains existed, but they were often intermittent, drying out in the heat of summer and flooding during rare but intense rains. It was within this extreme, changing, and sometimes unforgiving world that the earliest dinosaurs began to emerge. Before their rise, the terrestrial ecosystems were dominated by a variety of reptiles, including relatives of modern crocodiles, as well as groups of mammal-like reptiles known as therapsids. These creatures had survived the Permian-Triassic extinction in scattered populations, often in small and isolated refuges where conditions were survivable. The collapse of many dominant species created ecological openings, vacant niches in the food web where new types of animals could thrive if they had the right adaptations. Dinosaurs, though still small and relatively rare at first, possessed a suite of traits that allowed them to exploit these openings more effectively than many other animals. Among these traits were upright columnar legs that allowed for more efficient and faster movement, a more active metabolism than most other reptiles of the time, and highly adapted jaws and teeth suited for a variety of diets, from plants to small animals. The early Triassic was not a time when dinosaurs ruled the land outright. Instead, they were part of a more diverse mosaic of life that included large herbivorous and carnivorous reptiles. Nevertheless, the unique environmental pressures of Pangaea gradually favored the rise of dinosaurs. In the harsh interior regions, for example, the ability to move quickly and cover long distances to find food or water became a major advantage. Animals with more energy-efficient walking and running abilities could survive in open plains and arid landscapes where resources were sparse and widely scattered. Additionally, the hot, dry climate likely encouraged smaller, more agile animals to thrive over larger, slower competitors, allowing early dinosaurs, which were often small and lightweight, to expand their populations. Their active metabolism and upright posture also helped them survive in regions where temperature extremes were severe, as they could regulate their movement and activity to avoid overheating or overcooling. Pangaea's vastness also meant that ecosystems were connected across enormous distances. The supercontinent's continuous landmass allowed terrestrial animals to migrate across hundreds or even thousands of kilometers, spreading into new areas as local populations adapted to different conditions. This mobility was especially advantageous for the early dinosaurs. They could follow seasonal rains, seek out refuges in river valleys, and escape competition or predation in one region by moving to another. In effect, the supercontinent acted as a highway system, providing opportunities for the dinosaurs to explore, adapt, and expand into a variety of ecological zones. Coastal regions with more moderate climates offered refuges during the harshest conditions in the interior, allowing for the survival of species during particularly extreme years. These transitional zones likely became important centers for early dinosaur evolution, where adaptations for both arid and more temperate environments could develop and spread. The flora of the Triassic world also played a crucial role in shaping the rise of dinosaurs. Plant life, although reduced by the Permian-Triassic extinction, began to recover in the early Triassic. Seed ferns, cycads, conifers, and ginkgo-like plants formed the backbone of terrestrial vegetation, while smaller plants such as mosses and horsetails covered the ground. Forests were generally limited to wetter areas, while dry interior regions were dominated by sparse vegetation and hardy shrubs. These plants provided both food and shelter for the emerging dinosaurs. Herbivorous species could feed on tough, fibrous plants, gradually evolving stronger jaws and teeth capable of processing these resources. Carnivorous dinosaurs, in turn, could take advantage of herbivorous animals weakened by drought or competition, and the cyclical nature of rainfall and plant growth created seasonal pressures that favored animals capable of flexibility, movement, and endurance. One of the fascinating aspects of early dinosaur evolution during the Triassic is the diversity of forms that appeared in this period. Dinosaurs were not initially gigantic, as many of the more famous later species would become. Instead, they were generally small, ranging from less than 1 meter in length to a few meters at most. Among them were bipedal carnivores, whose upright stance allowed them to hunt efficiently, and small, agile herbivores that could escape predators or travel long distances in search of food. These early dinosaurs included ancestors of groups that would later dominate the Jurassic and Cretaceous periods, such as the sauropodomorphs, which would eventually evolve into the enormous long-necked giants, and the theropods, which would later include predators such as Tyrannosaurus rex. Fossil evidence from places like South America, Africa, and Europe shows that dinosaurs were already experimenting with different body plans, diets, and behaviors, demonstrating remarkable evolutionary creativity in response to the challenges of Pangea's harsh environments. The oceans surrounding Pangaea were equally influential in shaping life on land. While dinosaurs were strictly terrestrial, the proximity of vast oceanic bodies affected climate, rainfall, and the formation of coastal habitats. Seasonal monsoons may have swept across the supercontinent, bringing bursts of rain that temporarily transformed deserts into lush, albeit temporary wetlands. These seasonal changes created pressures that favored animals with the ability to adapt quickly to varying conditions, including dinosaurs that could move efficiently across both wet and dry environments. The shifting coastal environments may also have created corridors for dispersal, allowing different populations of dinosaurs to come into contact, exchange genes, and develop new adaptations over time. In essence, the interplay between land and sea, heat and dryness, abundance and scarcity, drove evolutionary innovation. Fossil evidence from the early and middle Triassic provides a vivid picture of how these early dinosaurs lived and evolved. For example, fossils of small bipedal species such as Eoraptor and Herrerasaurus, found in what is now South America, reveal agile creatures with sharp teeth, capable of hunting or scavenging. These fossils suggest that dinosaurs were already experimenting with predatory strategies, social behaviors, and locomotion styles. At the same time, plant-eating dinosaurs like Plateosaurus, which appeared slightly later in the late Triassic, show adaptations for processing tough vegetation and traveling long distances to find food, indicating a capacity for endurance and resilience that would become crucial for survival in the Triassic landscape. The extinction of many previously dominant species also contributed indirectly to dinosaur success. Large amphibians, which had once ruled rivers and swamps, were reduced in number, opening up freshwater ecosystems for smaller reptiles and early dinosaurs to explore. Large predatory reptiles, which had dominated terrestrial ecosystems, were also diminished, leaving opportunities for smaller, faster, and more versatile animals. In this way, the Triassic period represented a resetting of evolutionary possibilities. Dinosaurs, equipped with their distinctive anatomy and behaviors, were ideally suited to take advantage of these new opportunities. Their evolutionary trajectory during this time set the stage for the explosive diversification that would occur in the Jurassic period, when dinosaurs truly became the dominant animals on Earth. Another crucial factor in the success of early dinosaurs was their reproduction and growth strategies. Dinosaurs were oviparous, laying eggs, which allowed them to produce multiple offspring at once. Some early species likely exhibited parental care, protecting eggs and young from predators, while others may have relied on sheer numbers to ensure that enough individuals survived. Rapid growth rates, inferred from fossil bone structures, suggest that dinosaurs were able to reach maturity faster than many other reptiles, giving them a competitive edge in unstable and unpredictable environments. This combination of reproductive strategies, fast growth, and efficient locomotion made dinosaurs resilient, adaptable, and able to colonize a wide range of habitats across Pangaea. The early Triassic was also a period of evolutionary experimentation. Dinosaurs were just one of several groups of reptiles that began diversifying at this time. Other reptiles, such as archosaurs, which include ancestors of crocodiles and pterosaurs, were evolving alongside dinosaurs, and the interactions between these groups created selective pressures that shaped behavior, morphology, and survival strategies. Predation, competition for resources, and the challenges of extreme climates all encouraged adaptations that would refine the dinosaur body plan. Over time, natural selection favored dinosaurs that could move efficiently, survive periods of scarcity, reproduce effectively, and adapt to multiple ecological zones, setting the stage for their eventual dominance. In addition, geological processes during the Triassic, such as volcanic activity, shifting river systems, and the slow movement of Pangaea itself contributed to habitat variation and environmental pressures. Volcanoes, particularly those erupting along rift zones and mountain chains forming at the edges of Pangaea, occasionally covered large areas with ash, temporarily altering habitats and climate patterns. These disturbances favored species that were flexible, mobile, and able to exploit changing resources. Seasonal droughts, occasional floods, and temperature extremes continued to shape selection pressures, encouraging traits such as endurance, speed, dietary versatility, and behavioral adaptability, all qualities that early dinosaurs possessed in varying degrees. By the end of the Triassic, roughly 200 million years ago, the stage had been set for a new era in the history of life. Dinosaurs, once small and relatively rare, had spread across much of Pangaea, exploring and occupying diverse ecological niches. The foundations of dinosaur success had been established: efficient locomotion, versatile diets, active metabolisms, reproductive strategies suited to harsh environments, and the ability to move across a vast supercontinent. While Pangaea itself would not last forever, the supercontinent began to slowly break apart during the Jurassic. The legacy of its extreme climates, expansive landscapes, and evolutionary opportunities was indelibly imprinted on the lineage of dinosaurs. The Triassic was a time of recovery, adaptation, and the first steps toward dominance. It was the period in which the earliest dinosaurs arose, survived, and began a journey that would ultimately see them dominate the Earth for over 160 million years, shaping the ecosystems and the evolutionary future of the planet in ways that are still visible in the fossil record today. Pangaea's immense landmass provided a testing ground for evolution, a stage where the earliest dinosaurs could explore new ways of life. From the scorching deserts of the interior to the seasonal wetlands of the coasts, from sparse plant-covered plains to river valleys and temporary lakes, dinosaurs adapted, diversified, and survived. Their journey in the early Triassic reflects the resilience of life itself, demonstrating how even after near-total collapse, nature finds a way to innovate, experiment, and flourish. The earliest dinosaurs may have started as small, inconspicuous creatures, but they were the pioneers of a new era, the first chapter in the long and fascinating history of the Age of Dinosaurs, a period that would eventually capture the imagination of humans millions of years later through fossils, footprints, and the remnants of a world long vanished. The legacy of the early Triassic continues to influence our understanding of evolution, paleontology, and Earth history. Fossil discoveries from this period provide windows into how the earliest dinosaurs lived, moved, ate, and reproduced, and how the harsh world of Pangaea molded these first steps in dinosaur evolution. Every bone, tooth, and footprint tells a story of survival against odds, of adaptation to extremes, and of the subtle interplay between environment and biology. It was a world shaped by fire and drought, by wind and shifting continents, and within it, the earliest dinosaurs found their place, sowing the seeds of a lineage that would dominate terrestrial ecosystems for millions of years to come. The emergence of dinosaurs during the early Triassic illustrates the profound influence that a single supercontinent can have on life. Pangaea was not simply a mass of connected lands. It was a vast laboratory where extreme conditions, widespread deserts, river systems, and fluctuating climates combined to drive evolutionary change. Dinosaurs, small yet capable, were perfectly equipped to take advantage of the opportunities provided by this world. In doing so, they became one of the most remarkable success stories in the history of life, proving that even in the aftermath of catastrophe, life can rise, diversify, and flourish in astonishing ways. The Triassic period, therefore, stands as a milestone not only in geology, but also in the grand story of life. It was the period when the first sparks of dinosaur evolution ignited, when Pangaea's extreme climate and vast landscapes tested the resilience of life, and when the foundations were laid for the incredible diversity of dinosaurs that would follow. By studying this period, we gain insight into the power of environmental pressures, the adaptability of life, and the intricate dance between Earth's physical features and the creatures that inhabit it. The Triassic, beginning around 252 million years ago, marks the dawn of the Age of Dinosaurs, and it owes its significance not only to the creatures that emerged, but also to the supercontinent that nurtured them. Pangaea, with all its extremes, challenges, and opportunities, set the stage for one of the most extraordinary evolutionary stories in the history of life on Earth. Dinosaurs spread across the Earth in a way that was deeply shaped by the supercontinent Pangaea. Around 320 million years ago, during the late Carboniferous period, the Earth's landmasses gradually came together, forming a single, enormous continent. By roughly 210 million years ago, at the beginning of the Triassic period, Pangaea stretched across much of the planet, connecting lands that today are separated by thousands of kilometers of ocean. This immense landmass created a unique opportunity for dinosaurs to move freely, explore new regions, and occupy spaces that would later become entirely different continents. The first dinosaurs appeared approximately 230 million years ago. They were small, fast, and highly adaptable, traits that helped them survive in a world recovering from the Permian-Triassic extinction, which had occurred about 252 million years ago. This massive extinction event had wiped out nearly 95% of marine species and about 70% of land species, leaving enormous areas of empty ecosystems. These empty ecological niches allowed the earliest dinosaurs to thrive without facing heavy competition from other large vertebrates. Because Pangaea was one continuous landmass, dinosaurs could migrate over long distances without encountering oceans or other barriers. Migration allowed them to find new sources of food, access safe breeding areas, and escape predators or environmental stresses. In later periods, as the supercontinent began to drift and separate, isolated dinosaur populations evolved in unique ways. But during the height of Pangaea, free movement across the land enabled species to spread across regions that today are separated by vast oceans, including what would become North America, South America, Europe, Africa, and Asia. Dinosaurs faced many challenges while spreading across Pangaea. The interior of the continent was extremely hot and dry, particularly far from the coasts, which created harsh deserts and arid plains. Seasonal rivers and temporary lakes were the only sources of fresh water in some areas, forcing dinosaurs to travel long distances to find food and water. The coastal regions, in contrast, had a more moderate climate and were often wetter, providing more stable environments for large herds of herbivores. Despite these challenges, dinosaurs' adaptability allowed them to exploit different environments. Carnivorous dinosaurs could follow herbivore populations over great distances, while herbivores developed specialized feeding strategies to consume the diverse plants that grew in various climates. The lack of natural barriers on Pangaea also encouraged the mixing of different species. Without oceans dividing populations, evolutionary pressures acted across the entire landmass, creating strong competition between groups. This competition drove dinosaurs to become faster, stronger, or more efficient at finding food, leading to rapid diversification. Over millions of years, new species evolved and spread widely, taking advantage of the connected landscapes. Fossil evidence shows that many dinosaur groups were not restricted to one region. Fossils of certain early dinosaurs, like Plateosaurus, have been found in areas that are today separated by thousands of kilometers, showing that these animals once roamed freely across vast distances. Rivers, coastlines, and mountain ranges within Pangaea influenced migration patterns. Large rivers provided pathways through the arid interior, while seasonal floods created fertile valleys where plants grew abundantly. Mountains acted as natural corridors in some cases, guiding dinosaur movement along their slopes and passes. Even deserts, which may seem inhospitable, sometimes acted as migration routes for species adapted to arid conditions. The combination of these features allowed dinosaurs to explore virtually every part of Pangaea, from the northern reaches to the southern tips. The supercontinent's size also affected how dinosaurs reproduced and formed social structures. Large open plains encouraged herd behavior among herbivores, providing safety in numbers against predators. Predators, in turn, evolved strategies to hunt these large herds, often traveling in packs or developing specialized hunting techniques. The free movement across Pangaea meant that social and survival strategies could spread between populations, further enhancing the success of certain species. Plant life on Pangaea also influenced dinosaur migration. Ferns, cycads, conifers, and other gymnosperms dominated the landscapes, varying in density and availability depending on the region. Herbivorous dinosaurs had to adapt to seasonal fluctuations in plant growth, sometimes moving hundreds of kilometers to find enough food. These migrations helped distribute seeds and fertilize soils, subtly shaping the landscapes they traveled through. Carnivorous dinosaurs followed these herbivores, linking the survival of predator and prey populations across the continent. Fossilized trackways show that some dinosaurs undertook long migrations, perhaps over hundreds or even thousands of kilometers. These tracks reveal patterns of seasonal movement, suggesting that dinosaurs may have followed food sources or climatic conditions, much like modern-day large herbivores, such as elephants or bison. The interconnected landmass of Pangaea made such migrations possible, something that would have been far more difficult if the continents were separated by oceans. The evolutionary success of dinosaurs on Pangaea can also be tied to the minimal competition they faced from other vertebrates. While synapsids, the ancestors of mammals, still existed, many of the largest land animals had been wiped out in the Permian-Triassic extinction. This lack of competition, combined with the ability to move freely across an enormous landmass, allowed dinosaurs to occupy ecological niches ranging from small insect eaters to large herbivores and apex predators. Over time, different dinosaur groups became specialized for particular environments. Some thrived in forested regions, feeding on ferns and cycads. Others became dominant in open plains or semi-arid areas, evolving large sizes and long legs for efficient travel. The freedom of movement across Pangaea allowed these adaptations to develop without the restrictions that isolated continents would later impose. Populations could expand or shift to new areas when local conditions changed, reducing the risk of extinction from localized disasters like droughts or volcanic activity. The interconnectedness of Pangaea also helped spread evolutionary innovations. Features such as improved respiratory systems, advanced hunting techniques, or specialized teeth could benefit multiple populations across the continent. For example, certain herbivorous dinosaurs developed complex teeth for grinding tough plant material, a trait that could spread among populations migrating to different regions. Similarly, social behaviors, such as pack hunting, may have been shared or adapted across wide areas, promoting survival and growth of species across vast distances. The breaking apart of Pangaea began in the Jurassic period, roughly 180 million years ago, slowly dividing the single landmass into separate continents. This process eventually limited the free movement of dinosaurs, isolating populations and giving rise to unique regional species. However, for nearly 100 million years before this breakup, the continuous landmass allowed dinosaurs to establish themselves almost everywhere on Earth, spreading rapidly and diversifying into countless forms. Dinosaurs also faced the challenge of climate variation across the enormous supercontinent. The northern regions experienced cooler temperatures compared to the hot, arid interior, while southern areas near what would become Gondwana were warmer and more humid. To cope with this, dinosaurs evolved different body sizes, metabolic adaptations, and behaviors suited to local climates. These adaptations, combined with the freedom to migrate, allowed them to colonize almost every ecological zone of Pangaea. Evidence of this widespread distribution comes from fossils found on multiple modern continents. Fossils of prosauropods, early theropods, and other dinosaur groups have been discovered in North America, South America, Europe, Africa, and Asia, suggesting that they once moved freely across the connected landmass. In some cases, species found on separate continents were closely related, indicating that migration and gene flow occurred over great distances. The abundance of open spaces and low competition on Pangaea also influenced dinosaur body size. Many species could grow large because they had access to sufficient food across vast regions, and predators had to adapt to hunting these increasingly massive herbivores. This created a feedback loop where larger herbivores supported larger predators, and both could travel widely to sustain themselves. Dinosaurs' reproductive strategies were also shaped by migration possibilities. Some species laid eggs in large nesting grounds that could be revisited seasonally. Being able to move freely across Pangaea meant that they could choose nesting sites based on safety, food availability, and climate, ensuring higher survival rates for their young. The continuous landmass also allowed for long-term survival during environmental changes. If one region experienced drought or volcanic activity, populations could move to more favorable areas without being confined by oceanic barriers. This mobility likely contributed to the remarkable resilience and dominance of dinosaurs throughout the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous periods. Interactions between species were influenced by this freedom of movement as well. Predators could track prey across vast distances, and herbivores could avoid predators by migrating to safer areas. Competition for resources was spread across the continent, preventing local extinctions that might occur on smaller, isolated landmasses. This dynamic created a constantly shifting balance that encouraged adaptability and innovation among dinosaur populations. The geological features of Pangaea, including mountain chains, river systems, and coastal plains, guided migrations but did not prevent them. Some dinosaurs followed river valleys to access water and fertile feeding grounds. Others moved along coastlines to avoid harsh interior deserts. Even seasonal changes in vegetation drove migration patterns as herbivores tracked the growth cycles of plants across the supercontinent. In addition to terrestrial movement, the climate and geography of Pangaea influenced the evolution of other traits, such as sensory adaptations. Predators evolved keen eyesight, smell, and hearing to locate prey over long distances, while herbivores developed heightened senses to detect predators early and flee efficiently. Migration allowed these traits to be tested and refined across diverse environments. Dinosaurs on Pangaea were not only numerous, but also incredibly diverse. From tiny, agile predators to enormous sauropods, the freedom to explore and colonize different habitats created opportunities for ecological experimentation. Species that could adapt quickly to new environments survived and spread, while less flexible species remained confined or disappeared. This evolutionary pressure, amplified by the connectivity of the land, contributed to the long-term dominance of dinosaurs during the Mesozoic era. Even minor ecological changes could drive migration and evolution. Seasonal flooding created temporary wetlands that herbivores exploited for food, and predators followed. Volcanic activity occasionally forced local populations to relocate, leading to new ecological interactions in different regions. The mobility allowed by a single continent ensured that dinosaurs could respond to these environmental challenges effectively, maintaining population stability and promoting genetic diversity. Over millions of years, dinosaurs became the most successful terrestrial animals in Earth's history. Their ability to migrate freely across Pangaea allowed them to occupy every imaginable ecological niche, from forested river valleys to arid deserts, from mountainous regions to coastal plains. This vast, interconnected environment provided the foundation for evolutionary innovation, ecological dominance, and long-term survival. By the late Jurassic period, approximately 150 million years ago, dinosaurs had spread virtually everywhere on Pangaea, taking full advantage of the continuous landmass. This widespread distribution set the stage for the extraordinary diversity of forms that would continue into the Cretaceous period. Even as the supercontinent began to break apart, many dinosaur lineages had already established extensive ranges, ensuring that the descendants of these early migrants could survive on the newly forming continents. The story of dinosaur migration across Pangaea illustrates how geography and land connectivity can shape evolutionary outcomes. Without oceans to block movement, dinosaurs could explore vast territories, exploit multiple habitats, and adapt to a variety of climates. Free migration promoted competition, encouraged specialization, and allowed evolutionary innovations to spread across enormous distances. This unique combination of freedom, opportunity, and adaptability helped dinosaurs become the dominant terrestrial animals for over 160 million years. The fossils and trackways left behind on continents that are now separated by oceans provide a lasting record of this great migration. From North America to South America, from Europe to Africa, the early dinosaurs exploited every corner of Pangaea, creating a rich tapestry of life that would define the Mesozoic era. Their ability to move freely across a single landmass not only facilitated survival and diversification, but also set the stage for some of the largest, most iconic creatures ever to walk the Earth, shaping ecosystems in ways that would influence life for millions of years to come. This vast freedom of movement, combined with the absence of significant competition and the variety of habitats across Pangaea, ensured that dinosaurs were not confined to small regions or limited ecological niches. Instead, they were able to explore, adapt, and dominate almost every terrestrial environment. The single landmass acted as a natural corridor, linking populations, spreading traits, and creating a dynamic and ever-changing landscape of evolutionary pressures. This connectivity was a key factor in why dinosaurs thrived, diversified, and became the iconic rulers of the Mesozoic world. Even as Pangaea began to fragment, the legacy of free migration remained. Dinosaur species that had once roamed vast distances were now gradually isolated on separate landmasses, leading to the development of unique regional faunas. However, the extensive ranges they had already established ensured that many lineages survived the transition, maintaining the genetic diversity and adaptive potential built up during their time on the unified supercontinent. The ability of dinosaurs to move across Pangaea, coupled with the vast, unbroken expanse of land and the variety of climates, created an evolutionary laboratory unmatched in Earth's history. For over 100 million years, dinosaurs could travel, explore, and adapt across one enormous supercontinent, laying the foundation for their enduring legacy as the most successful terrestrial animals of the Mesozoic era. This freedom of movement was a central factor in their dominance. Unlike animals confined to smaller continents, dinosaurs could escape local disasters, exploit seasonal changes, and explore new territories. Over millions of years, these migrations led to genetic mixing, diversification of species, and the evolution of some of the largest, most specialized, and most iconic forms of life ever seen on Earth. Pangaea, in its vastness and connectedness, allowed dinosaurs to write one of the most remarkable chapters in the history of life. By linking distant regions and providing open routes for migration, Pangaea allowed ecosystems to develop on a continental scale. Dinosaurs were able to influence vegetation patterns, predator-prey dynamics, and even the evolution of other species. The interconnected nature of the supercontinent turned it into a vast stage on which the drama of dinosaur evolution played out in full, with free migration acting as a key driver of adaptation, survival, and diversification. The fossil record across multiple continents supports this picture. Similar species found in geographically distant regions show that dinosaurs did not evolve in isolation, but rather moved and adapted across wide areas. Early sauropodomorphs, theropods, and ornithischians demonstrate that migration was not only possible, but frequent, allowing these species to exploit a variety of habitats and climatic zones. This widespread distribution was a direct consequence of the supercontinent's unbroken landmass. The movement of dinosaurs across Pangaea also set the stage for the rise of the giant sauropods in the Jurassic period. With access to abundant plant resources over large areas, these herbivores could grow to enormous sizes. Predators adapted to hunt them, evolving strength, speed, and strategies to tackle these massive creatures. Without the freedom to move across the continent, such large animals might have been constrained by limited resources and isolated habitats. The spread of dinosaurs across one landmass was a defining feature of their evolutionary story. By moving freely across Pangaea, they could colonize new territories, adapt to various climates, and interact with other species on a continental scale. This freedom allowed them to grow, diversify, and dominate, laying the groundwork for the incredible variety of life forms that would characterize the Mesozoic era. The unity of the supercontinent created an extraordinary evolutionary playground, one in which dinosaurs could explore every corner, face challenges, and evolve in ways that fragmented continents would not have allowed. This mobility and widespread distribution also contributed to the dinosaurs' resilience. When environmental conditions changed in one part of Pangaea, populations could shift to new areas, ensuring survival over millions of years. By linking ecosystems, enabling genetic exchange, and providing access to diverse resources, the supercontinent created ideal conditions for the rise of the dinosaurs as the dominant terrestrial animals of the Mesozoic era. Their ability to migrate freely across a single landmass is a central reason why dinosaurs became one of the most successful groups of animals in Earth's history. The combination of open space, minimal barriers, and ecological diversity allowed them to evolve into a staggering array of species, from tiny agile predators to massive plant-eating giants, leaving an indelible mark on the planet's biological history. Dinosaurs spread across Pangaea showcases how geography, climate, and ecological opportunity work together to shape the course of evolution. The supercontinent's connectedness gave them the freedom to explore, adapt, and thrive, making Pangaea not just a backdrop for their story, but a driving force in their success. Their dominance, longevity, and diversity were inseparable from the ability to roam a single vast continent. This freedom, combined with the richness of habitats and the absence of severe competition, allowed dinosaurs to colonize every corner of Pangaea, setting the stage for their reign across the Mesozoic world. The rise of dinosaurs as the dominant creatures on Earth during the Triassic and later periods is a story of opportunity, adaptation, and environmental advantage, all of which were closely linked to the unique characteristics of the supercontinent Pangaea. To truly understand why dinosaurs thrived and became the rulers of terrestrial ecosystems, we need to explore the combination of ecological, evolutionary, and geographical factors that allowed them to flourish. Pangaea, which existed around 320 to 200 million years ago, created conditions unlike any other time in Earth's history. Its vast, uninterrupted landmass presented both challenges and opportunities that shaped the path of life in profound ways. One of the key reasons dinosaurs thrived on Pangaea was the low level of competition they faced when they first appeared. Following the Permian-Triassic extinction event, which occurred roughly 252 million years ago, the Earth experienced the most severe mass extinction in its history. This catastrophic event wiped out approximately 90% of marine species and nearly 70% of terrestrial species. In the aftermath, the surviving life forms found themselves in a world with many empty ecological niches. These niches represented unoccupied roles in the ecosystems, such as positions as predators, herbivores, scavengers, and small omnivores. Essentially, there were abundant resources available, and very few organisms were present to compete for them. For newly evolving groups like early dinosaurs, this situation provided an unprecedented opportunity to expand, adapt, and diversify without facing intense competition from well-established species. The early dinosaurs themselves were remarkably well suited to take advantage of these conditions. They were generally small, agile, and highly adaptable creatures, capable of exploiting resources that were inaccessible to many larger, slower animals that had survived the mass extinction. Small body size offered numerous advantages in this new world. It required less food to survive, allowed for faster movement and quicker responses to predators, and enabled dinosaurs to explore a variety of habitats, from river valleys to forest edges. Their adaptability extended beyond just physical traits. Early dinosaurs likely had highly flexible behaviors and feeding habits, allowing them to switch between plants and small animals depending on availability. This versatility was critical in a world recovering from devastation, where food sources could be unpredictable and environmental conditions could change rapidly. Pangaea's geography played a crucial role in amplifying these advantages. Unlike modern Earth, which is divided into several continents with oceans and seas separating them, Pangaea was a single enormous landmass. This meant that terrestrial creatures could move across vast distances without encountering large bodies of water. For early dinosaurs, this connectivity allowed for the spread of populations over immense areas, promoting genetic diversity and enabling them to colonize a wide range of habitats. The absence of geographic barriers also meant that new adaptations and successful traits could quickly propagate across populations, accelerating evolutionary processes. Dinosaurs could experiment with size, shape, and behavior in multiple environments, and the traits that worked well in one region could influence populations far away, creating a feedback loop that enhanced their overall success. The climate of Pangaea further contributed to the success of dinosaurs. Although the supercontinent had extreme weather patterns, hot interiors, seasonal droughts, and strong monsoons in coastal areas, these conditions favored creatures that were highly mobile and could adapt to a variety of environmental stresses. Dinosaurs, with their efficient locomotion, keen senses, and likely warm-blooded or partially warm-blooded metabolism, were able to survive and even thrive in these conditions. Their ability to move long distances in search of food or water allowed them to exploit seasonal resources, while their diversity in size and shape meant that different species could occupy specialized roles in various habitats, from arid interior plains to lush riverbanks. In many ways, the harshness of Pangaea's climate acted as a selective pressure, encouraging traits that promoted endurance, speed, and versatility, qualities that early dinosaurs possessed in abundance. Another factor that gave dinosaurs an edge was the relative scarcity of large competitors. Before dinosaurs rose to prominence, other groups such as the synapsids, often referred to as mammal-like reptiles, had dominated terrestrial ecosystems. However, many of these species had been severely affected by the Permian-Triassic extinction and were struggling to recover. The same was true for other archosaurian groups that had survived the extinction event. In this context, dinosaurs faced fewer threats from established, dominant groups and were able to occupy niches that had previously been unavailable or contested. This lack of competition not only allowed dinosaurs to expand in number, but also encouraged the evolution of a wide variety of forms. Some became swift predators hunting small prey, others became towering herbivores feeding on cycads and early conifers, and still others evolved into early omnivores, exploiting multiple food sources simultaneously. The adaptability of dinosaurs was not limited to feeding strategies or movement, it also extended to reproductive strategies. Early dinosaurs likely laid eggs, which offered advantages over live birth in certain environments. Egg-laying allowed species to produce multiple offspring with relatively low parental investment in each individual, increasing the chances that some would survive in a world where predation and environmental hazards were high. Nesting behaviors, social interactions, and even potential parental care may have contributed to higher survival rates for young dinosaurs, further ensuring the expansion and dominance of their populations across Pangaea. Pangaea's vast size also promoted diversity within dinosaur lineages. As populations spread across different regions, they encountered variations in climate, vegetation, and terrain. Over time, these environmental differences led to adaptations that created distinct species suited to specific habitats. For example, dinosaurs living in the interior deserts of Pangaea might have developed traits to cope with heat and scarcity of water, while those inhabiting river valleys and coastal regions might have specialized in exploiting abundant vegetation or hunting smaller animals. This process of regional diversification contributed to the rapid expansion of dinosaur species and established the foundation for the spectacular variety seen in the later Jurassic and Cretaceous periods. The combination of ecological opportunity, adaptability, and geographical advantages created a feedback loop that allowed dinosaurs to dominate Pangaea. As populations increased and diversified, they filled empty niches, which in turn further stabilized ecosystems and allowed for more specialized forms to evolve. The presence of multiple coexisting species in different niches reduced direct competition and promoted cooperation within ecosystems, creating balanced food webs. This balance made ecosystems more resilient and enabled dinosaurs to maintain their dominance over millions of years. Their ability to occupy nearly every ecological niche, small and large herbivores, agile predators, scavengers, and eventually even apex predators, meant that they could exploit resources that other surviving groups could not, giving them a clear evolutionary advantage. Paleontological evidence supports the idea that dinosaurs were uniquely positioned to take advantage of Pangaea's conditions. Fossil discoveries from early Triassic deposits, dating back approximately 230 million years, show that dinosaurs were already diversifying into multiple groups by this time. Species like Herrerasaurus, a small bipedal predator, and Eoraptor, one of the earliest known omnivorous dinosaurs, illustrate the variety of forms that appeared relatively quickly after the Permian-Triassic extinction. These fossils suggest that dinosaurs were spreading across Pangaea, occupying multiple habitats, and experimenting with different modes of life. The rapid pace of this diversification is remarkable, especially when compared to the slower recovery of other reptilian and synapsid groups during the same period. The success of dinosaurs on Pangaea also set the stage for their later rise to global dominance. Once the supercontinent began to fragment during the late Triassic and early Jurassic, around 210 to 180 million years ago, dinosaur populations were already widespread and highly diverse. The separation of land masses created new evolutionary pressures and opportunities, but the groundwork for dominance had already been laid. Dinosaurs had become the most adaptable, versatile, and resilient terrestrial animals on the planet, capable of surviving climate fluctuations, predation pressures, and changing environments. In addition, dinosaurs' rise on Pangaea was closely linked to the availability of abundant plant life, which formed the base of terrestrial ecosystems. Early Triassic plants, such as ferns, horsetails, cycads, and conifers, provided ample food for herbivorous dinosaurs. The absence of large mammalian herbivores allowed these plant-eating dinosaurs to exploit these resources freely and, in turn, supported the evolution of larger predatory species that fed on them. The interplay between plant and dinosaur populations created dynamic ecosystems in which energy flowed efficiently through multiple trophic levels, further strengthening the ecological dominance of dinosaurs. The very structure of Pangaea contributed to these ecological interactions. The supercontinent's vast interior regions, far from the moderating influence of the oceans, experienced seasonal extremes of temperature and rainfall. Such conditions favored animals capable of long-distance movement and flexible feeding habits. Dinosaurs, with their efficient locomotion and adaptable diets, were able to navigate these seasonal challenges successfully. They could travel to areas where food and water were available, reproduce efficiently, and survive periods of scarcity, while less adaptable animals struggled to cope. In this sense, Pangaea's harsh conditions did not hinder dinosaurs, but rather provided selective pressures that enhanced traits critical for survival and long-term dominance. The domination of dinosaurs on Pangaea was also helped by their social behavior. Evidence from later periods suggests that many dinosaurs may have lived, at least in part, in groups or herds. Herd behavior would have offered protection from predators, facilitated hunting or foraging, and improved the survival of young individuals. Even in the early stages of their rise, social interactions may have contributed to the spread of successful traits and allowed populations to exploit resources more efficiently. This combination of social intelligence, physical adaptability, and ecological opportunity created a perfect scenario for dinosaurs to thrive. The first dinosaurs appeared on Earth in a world that was vastly different from the one we know today. Around 230 million years ago, during a time called the Late Triassic period, the Earth's land masses had joined together to form a single enormous supercontinent known as Pangaea. This landmass stretched almost from the North Pole to the South Pole, creating a unique environment with extreme climates, long stretches of dry deserts, and some areas that were lush and fertile. Within this immense and changing landscape, the earliest dinosaurs evolved, and though they were small and often easily overlooked compared to later giants like Tyrannosaurus or Brachiosaurus, they were remarkably successful in adapting to the new world around them. These early dinosaurs were not the colossal, fearsome creatures many people imagine when they think of dinosaurs. Instead, most of them were small, light, and extremely agile. Many measured only about 1 to 2 meters in length, and their bodies were built for speed. Their long legs, balanced bodies, and lightweight frames allowed them to move quickly across the dry, open plains of Pangaea. This speed was essential for survival because they shared their world with larger and more dangerous reptiles, early crocodile-like predators, and other threats. Being able to run, dart into hiding, and maneuver quickly was one of their greatest advantages. Early dinosaurs were also very adaptable. They evolved in an environment that changed in subtle and sometimes dramatic ways. The climate of Pangaea was mostly hot and dry in the interior regions, but closer to the coasts, there were rivers, lakes, and seasonal rainfall. Vegetation varied from ferns and horsetails in wetter regions to hardy, drought-resistant plants in the deserts. These dinosaurs could find food in many different conditions. Some were carnivores, hunting insects, small reptiles, or other early animals, while others were herbivores, grazing on low-lying plants and foliage. Their diets reflected their need to survive in a world that could be unpredictable, where food sources were not always abundant or easy to reach. The first dinosaurs were part of a broader group of reptiles called archosaurs, which also included the ancestors of modern crocodiles and birds. Archosaurs were distinguished by certain features like an upright stance, which meant that their legs were positioned directly beneath their bodies, rather than sprawled out to the sides like many earlier reptiles. This upright posture gave them greater endurance and allowed them to move efficiently over long distances. The earliest dinosaurs took full advantage of these traits, developing bodies that were lightweight, strong, and fast, which allowed them to compete for resources and avoid predators effectively. In terms of appearance, these early dinosaurs were often covered in scales, which helped protect them and prevent water loss in dry climates. Some may have had primitive feathers or feather-like structures, though the evidence is sparse for these very early forms. Feathers in later dinosaur species would eventually play a role not only in insulation, but also in display, and eventually the evolution of flight. Even though these first dinosaurs were small, their evolutionary innovations laid the foundation for the incredible diversity of species that would follow in the Jurassic and Cretaceous periods. One of the most remarkable aspects of these early dinosaurs was their intelligence relative to other reptiles of the time. Their brains, though small compared to modern mammals or birds, were proportionally larger than those of many other reptiles. This allowed them to process information quickly, react to predators, hunt efficiently, and navigate complex environments. Their heightened senses, including sharp vision and keen smell, further increased their chances of survival. In a world filled with both danger and opportunity, being fast, alert, and adaptable was often more important than sheer size or strength. Pangaea's geography played a significant role in shaping the evolution of these first dinosaurs. Because it was a single, massive landmass, species could migrate across vast distances without being blocked by oceans or large mountain ranges. This allowed early dinosaurs to spread widely and experiment with different ecological niches. In some areas, they became specialized hunters, while in others, they adapted to a herbivorous lifestyle, feeding on specific types of plants. This flexibility meant that even though the dinosaurs were still relatively small and inconspicuous, they were already beginning to diversify into the many forms that would dominate Earth in the next 200 million years. During this time, the Earth was recovering from a period of significant ecological disruption. Around 252 million years ago, at the end of the Permian period, a massive extinction event had wiped out a large proportion of life on the planet, including most marine species and many terrestrial animals. This event, sometimes called the Great Dying, left countless ecological niches empty. By the time the late Triassic arrived, many of these niches were ready to be filled. Early dinosaurs, small and versatile, were among the creatures that took advantage of these open opportunities. Their ability to adapt to different environments, combined with their speed and intelligence, allowed them to survive in a world that was still recovering from catastrophe. Fossil evidence of early dinosaurs shows a fascinating picture of their diversity and lifestyle. Some of the earliest known dinosaurs include species like Eoraptor, Herrerasaurus, and Plateosaurus. Eoraptor, for example, was a small, slender dinosaur about 1 meter in length, with sharp teeth and claws, indicating it was likely an opportunistic carnivore or omnivore. Herrerasaurus, slightly larger at around 4 to 6 meters, was one of the first predators among the dinosaurs, capable of hunting other reptiles and small animals. Plateosaurus, on the other hand, leaned toward herbivory, with a longer neck and teeth adapted for stripping leaves from plants. These species show that even at this early stage, dinosaurs were already experimenting with different ways of life and developing the characteristics that would later define the group. The environment of late Triassic Pangaea also influenced the behavior of these early dinosaurs. Because the climate could be harsh and food sources unevenly distributed, many species may have been social or at least interacted with others to increase their survival chances. Herding or living in small groups could help protect against predators, while cooperative hunting strategies may have been used by the larger carnivorous species. Social behaviors would later become more pronounced in some dinosaur groups, including the massive sauropods and fierce theropods of the Jurassic and Cretaceous periods. Another important factor in the success of early dinosaurs was their reproductive strategy. Like other reptiles, they laid eggs, often in nests built on the ground. Their eggs had hard or leathery shells, which provided protection from environmental hazards. By laying multiple eggs at once, these early dinosaurs increased the chances that at least some offspring would survive to adulthood. This strategy, combined with rapid growth rates, allowed populations to recover quickly from losses and maintain their presence across Pangaea's vast landscapes. The adaptations of early dinosaurs also reflect a remarkable example of evolutionary innovation. Their small size and agility gave them advantages in escaping predators and exploiting new habitats, while their upright posture and efficient locomotion allowed them to travel longer distances than many of their reptilian contemporaries. Their brains, though small in absolute terms, were capable of complex behaviors, including hunting, foraging, and perhaps even early forms of communication. Their success set the stage for a long and varied evolutionary history, one that would eventually lead to some of the largest land animals ever to walk the earth and much later to the birds we see today. Paleontologists have pieced together much of this story through careful study of fossilized bones, footprints, and even rare impressions of skin and feathers. Fossil sites in South America, Africa, and Europe have revealed skeletons of these early dinosaurs, sometimes found alongside other Triassic reptiles, showing the variety of life that shared the early Pangean world. Footprints preserved in ancient mudstones indicate that some species were fast runners, capable of covering significant distances, while others show evidence of foraging behavior, such as digging or browsing low vegetation. These findings provide a vivid glimpse into a world that existed over 230 million years ago, long before the age of giant sauropods and fearsome carnivores. Even though early dinosaurs were small, their influence on the ecosystems of their time was significant. They occupied roles that allowed them to exploit resources that other reptiles could not, whether by hunting small animals, feeding on specific plants, or rapidly moving across open plains. Their success also likely influenced the evolution of other species, including predators and competitors. The presence of dinosaurs, even in modest numbers and sizes, created new pressures and opportunities in the ecosystem, setting in motion an evolutionary cascade that would shape life on Earth for millions of years to come. Often, it comes from being adaptable, intelligent, and capable of moving quickly to seize opportunities as they arise. By focusing on speed, agility, and resourcefulness, these small creatures laid the groundwork for the rise of the most iconic group of land animals in Earth's history. Their emergence marked the beginning of a long journey that would eventually see dinosaurs diversify into forms ranging from the tiny hummingbird-sized Microraptor to the enormous Argentinosaurus, the largest land animal ever known. Over time, the traits that made early dinosaurs successful, flexibility, efficient movement, and keen senses, allowed them to survive multiple environmental changes, including shifts in climate and the breakup of Pangaea. By the Jurassic period, around 210 million years ago, dinosaurs had spread across much of the world and had evolved into many distinct groups, each with unique adaptations. Their early success during the late Triassic was a crucial stepping stone, demonstrating how small, seemingly ordinary creatures could rise to dominate a planet that had only recently begun to recover from one of its most devastating extinction events. The Permian-Triassic extinction event, often called the Great Dying, was the most catastrophic extinction in the entire history of our planet, a moment that reshaped life on Earth in ways that would echo for millions of years. This extinction did not happen overnight. It occurred around 252 million years ago, at the very end of the Permian period, and it wiped out an astonishingly large number of species. Scientists estimate that about 90% of all marine species and 70% of terrestrial species vanished, leaving a world almost emptied of its former life. The oceans, once filled with a dazzling array of creatures such as trilobites, brachiopods, and early corals, became nearly barren. On land, vast forests of seed ferns and giant trees were decimated, and many of the dominant land animals, including early amphibians and reptiles, disappeared. This massive loss of life created a strange, silent world in which the rules of survival were suddenly rewritten. The causes of the Permian-Triassic extinction are still debated, but researchers agree that a combination of catastrophic environmental changes created the perfect storm for such widespread destruction. Massive volcanic eruptions in what is now Siberia, known as the Siberian Traps, released enormous amounts of lava, toxic gases, and carbon dioxide into the atmosphere over a period of thousands of years. This unleashed a chain reaction of environmental upheavals. The greenhouse gases trapped heat, causing global temperatures to soar, while the acidification of oceans from the absorption of carbon dioxide poisoned marine ecosystems. Methane released from the seafloor likely accelerated warming, further destabilizing life both in the oceans and on land. The sky may have been choked with dust and soot from the volcanic eruptions, reducing sunlight and disrupting photosynthesis, which caused widespread collapse of plant life and food chains. The combination of extreme heat, oceanic anoxia, lack of oxygen, acid rain, and habitat destruction created a situation in which very few species could survive. In the aftermath of this extinction, the world was left almost empty. Life that had once flourished across every continent and in every ocean faced a new beginning. This blank canvas allowed evolution to take an entirely new path. The Permian ecosystems, which had been dominated by giant amphibians, sprawling seed fern forests, and peculiar marine invertebrates, were gone. Their disappearance removed ecological barriers, opening the door for new organisms to rise and fill the void. This is a crucial point in understanding how the extinction set the stage for the rise of the dinosaurs and the age of reptiles that would dominate the Triassic period. The earliest survivors of this cataclysm were generally small, adaptable species that could endure harsh conditions. On land, these included small reptiles, synapsids, mammal-like reptiles, and certain insects that could tolerate extreme fluctuations in temperature and scarcity of food. In the oceans, hardy species like some bivalves, gastropods, and a few kinds of brachiopods survived, often in isolated refuges where conditions were less extreme. Microbial life, including bacteria and fungi, thrived in the aftermath, helping to recycle nutrients and prepare the soil for the next wave of plant colonization. These survivors were not the most powerful or largest creatures, but their ability to endure the most hostile conditions allowed them to serve as the foundation for future ecosystems. One of the most striking effects of the extinction was the dramatic reshaping of marine life. Before the Permian-Triassic event, the oceans were dominated by complex reef ecosystems built by corals, bryozoans, and other reef-building organisms. After the extinction, most reefs collapsed, leaving vast stretches of empty ocean floor. It took millions of years for reefs to rebuild, and when they did, they were dominated by new groups of organisms, including scleractinian corals, which became the primary reef builders for the rest of the Mesozoic era. This transformation of marine ecosystems also included the rise of modern-looking mollusks and the ancestors of modern fish groups. The extinction essentially wiped out the old marine order, allowing new evolutionary experiments to take place and creating the ecological niches that would later support diverse marine life in the Triassic and Jurassic oceans. On land, the extinction led to equally profound changes. The great forests of the Permian, dominated by towering seed ferns and giant conifers, were largely destroyed. This collapse opened up opportunities for new types of plants to spread. Early gymnosperms, such as cycads and ginkgos, began to expand, and these plants would form the backbone of Mesozoic terrestrial ecosystems. Small, hardy ferns and seed plants were among the first to recolonize devastated landscapes, taking advantage of soils enriched with nutrients from decayed plant matter. In addition, volcanic soils created by the Siberian traps provided fertile ground for new plant species, allowing them to spread rapidly across the cleared land. This rapid turnover in plant life provided fresh opportunities for herbivorous animals to evolve and diversify, setting the stage for a major reshaping of terrestrial ecosystems. Animal life on land also began to shift dramatically. The synapsids, which had been the dominant land vertebrates during the late Permian, suffered enormous losses. However, their smaller, more adaptable relatives survived and eventually gave rise to the first true mammals. At the same time, early archosaur reptiles, a group that included the ancestors of crocodiles, pterosaurs, and dinosaurs, began to diversify. These creatures were relatively small at first, but were well suited to the harsh, unstable environments of early Triassic Earth. Over time, they became more prominent, gradually taking over ecological roles left vacant by the extinction of the larger Permian reptiles and amphibians. In essence, the Great Dying cleared ecological space, providing evolutionary freedom for new forms of life to emerge, experiment, and dominate. The Triassic world that emerged from the ashes of the Permian was dramatically different from what had come before. It was a world where life was recovering, evolving rapidly, and exploring new possibilities. The ecosystems of the early Triassic were simpler than those of the late Permian, with fewer species competing for resources, but they were dynamic and changing quickly. Predatory niches, once dominated by large amphibians and therapsids, were now open to early archosaurs. Herbivorous niches, previously filled by seed ferns and other dominant plants, now offered opportunities for gymnosperms, cycads, and newly evolving reptiles. The oceans were similarly dynamic, with opportunistic species spreading across empty ecological spaces. The relative scarcity of life allowed surviving species to experiment with new body plans, feeding strategies and behaviors, which led to a burst of evolutionary innovation. Another important consequence of the Permian-Triassic extinction was the increase in ecological specialization among species. With the old dominant groups gone, survivors were able to adapt to very specific niches. Some reptiles developed specialized limbs for running or climbing, while early marine reptiles evolved new ways to hunt and capture prey. Insects and other small invertebrates exploited new plant resources, developing specialized mouthparts and behaviors to feed on gymnosperms and ferns. This period also saw the emergence of complex predator-prey interactions that had been largely absent in the Permian. Predators adapted to hunt particular prey, and prey species developed defensive adaptations such as armor, speed, or new reproductive strategies. The extinction effectively reset the evolutionary playing field, encouraging rapid innovation and diversification. The aftermath of the Permian-Triassic extinction was not uniform across the planet. Some regions were devastated more than others, depending on local climate, geography, and volcanic activity. In some areas, deserts spread across once forested regions, while in others, lakes and rivers provided refuges for surviving species. Mountainous regions may have protected certain populations from extreme heat or volcanic fallout, creating isolated pockets of survival. These refuges were crucial for preserving genetic diversity, which allowed life to bounce back more effectively. Isolated populations would eventually migrate and expand as conditions improved, helping to seed the ecosystems of the Triassic period. The recovery from the Permian-Triassic extinction was slow, taking millions of years for biodiversity to return to pre-extinction levels. Estimates suggest that it took around 10 million years for marine life to recover fully and approximately 5 to 10 million years for terrestrial ecosystems to regain their diversity. During this time, the survivors of the extinction continued to evolve and diversify, slowly filling the empty ecological niches left by the disaster. This recovery period was marked by the appearance of new species, new ecological relationships, and the first steps toward the dominance of dinosaurs and other Mesozoic reptiles. The aftermath of the extinction was, in effect, a laboratory of evolution, where life was experimenting with new forms and strategies in response to a world that had been fundamentally altered. The Permian-Triassic extinction also had profound effects on climate and atmospheric composition. With the collapse of large forests and the death of countless marine organisms, the global carbon cycle was disrupted. Carbon dioxide levels fluctuated dramatically, influencing temperatures and precipitation patterns. The resulting climate instability created harsh conditions for surviving species, but it also encouraged evolutionary adaptations that would shape life for millions of years. Organisms that could withstand extreme heat, drought, or low oxygen levels gained a significant advantage, which in turn influenced the direction of evolution in the early Triassic. These pressures helped to shape the physiology, behavior, and distribution of species, guiding the evolution of the dinosaurs, early mammals, and other groups that would dominate the next era. One of the most remarkable aspects of the aftermath of the Permian-Triassic extinction is how it set the stage for entirely new ecosystems. The world that emerged was unlike anything seen before. On land, vast open plains began to replace dense forests, creating new habitats for early archosaurs and the first dinosaurs. Swamps and river systems provided refuges for amphibians and other aquatic or semi-aquatic species. In the oceans, the collapse of reefs led to simpler, more generalized ecosystems dominated by opportunistic species, but over time, more complex food webs re-emerged. The extinction acted as a reset button, erasing ancient ecological hierarchies and giving rise to new patterns of life that would dominate the Mesozoic era. It is also important to recognize the role of randomness and chance in the aftermath of the extinction. Survival was not solely determined by strength or size. Many small, seemingly insignificant species endured while larger, more dominant organisms perished. Geographic location, microclimate, and even sheer luck played a role in determining which species survived. This randomness introduced new pathways for evolution, leading to unexpected combinations of traits and novel organisms. The survivors were not necessarily the best in any traditional sense, but they were well positioned to exploit the empty world left behind by the Great Dying. The Permian-Triassic extinction, despite its destructiveness, ultimately provided a profound opportunity for life to reinvent itself. By clearing away the dominant species and the complex ecosystems that had existed for millions of years, it allowed evolutionary innovation to flourish. The rise of dinosaurs, the first mammals, modern coral reefs, and many other groups can be traced back to this single cataclysmic event. The extinction demonstrates the resilience of life, showing that even in the face of near-total devastation, life can adapt, recover, and diversify in extraordinary ways. The Earth after the Great Dying was a world of experimentation, a laboratory of evolution, where the survivors of the Permian laid the foundations for an entirely new age of life. While the event wiped out vast numbers of species and reshaped the planet's ecosystems, it also created the conditions for the rise of entirely new forms of life, ultimately leading to the incredible diversity of the Mesozoic era. The dinosaurs, the ancestors of mammals, and countless other groups owe their existence to this pivotal moment in Earth's history. The aftermath of the Great Dying shows how destruction and creation are often intertwined, and how even the most catastrophic events can open the door to new beginnings and extraordinary evolutionary possibilities. The recovery of life after the Permian-Triassic extinction is a story of gradual rebuilding, adaptation, and expansion. Initially, landscapes were dominated by a few resilient species that could tolerate extreme conditions. Over time, these species diversified and filled new niches, leading to more complex food webs and interactions. Forests gradually returned, first with hardy ferns and small plants, then with gymnosperms that would dominate the Triassic. Early reptiles and synapsids began to occupy the open landscapes, evolving into forms that would eventually include the first true dinosaurs. In the oceans, survivors such as bivalves, gastropods, and ammonoids proliferated, eventually leading to diverse marine ecosystems dominated by new reef-building corals and other marine organisms. This slow but steady process illustrates the persistence and adaptability of life, even in the wake of the most extreme extinction event in Earth's history. The lessons of the Permian-Triassic extinction are not limited to the distant past. They reveal patterns of resilience, adaptation, and opportunity that are fundamental to understanding the evolution of life. By studying how life recovered from this massive event, scientists gain insights into how ecosystems respond to catastrophic environmental changes, how species adapt to extreme conditions, and how biodiversity rebounds after near-total collapse. The aftermath of the Great Dying is a vivid example of how destruction can create space for innovation, allowing life to explore new forms and strategies that would shape the Earth for millions of years to come. In every sense, the Permian-Triassic extinction was not just an ending, but the beginning of a remarkable new chapter in the history of life on our planet, one that set the stage for the rise of the dinosaurs and the incredible diversity of the Mesozoic world. The ecological vacuum created by the Permian-Triassic extinction allowed the rise of new groups that would define the Triassic period. Archosaur reptiles, which had been minor players during the Permian, became the dominant terrestrial vertebrates. They included the ancestors of crocodiles, pterosaurs, and eventually dinosaurs, all of which were well adapted to the open landscapes and variable climates of the early Triassic. Small synapsids persisted in the shadows, evolving into the first mammals, while insects diversified alongside the new plants, exploiting fresh ecological niches. Life in the oceans also underwent dramatic transformations. Opportunistic species spread across empty seafloors, leading to a gradual rebuilding of complex ecosystems over millions of years. Coral reefs, once nearly obliterated, eventually re-emerged, setting the stage for the marine diversity of the Mesozoic. Absolutely. Here's an extensive, detailed, and simplified elaboration of your extract on the evolution of diversity among dinosaurs on Pangaea. I've expanded it to be highly elaborate, vivid, and engaging while keeping the language accessible. Since you requested more than 29.99 words, this is a very long-form explanation. When we think about the world during the age of the dinosaurs, it is easy to imagine separate continents scattered across vast oceans, each with its own unique animals and plants. But there was a time, over 230 million years ago, when nearly all the land on Earth was joined together into a single enormous supercontinent called Pangaea. This giant landmass stretched from the northern polar region all the way down to the southern polar region, creating an almost continuous stretch of land that was unlike anything we see today. Its sheer size, shape, and location had enormous consequences for the creatures that lived on it, especially the dinosaurs, who were beginning to emerge and diversify during this period. What is fascinating is that although Pangaea was one enormous landmass, it was far from being uniform. It contained a wide variety of climates, landscapes, and ecological zones, and this variation in the environment was one of the key drivers behind the incredible diversity of dinosaurs that evolved over the millions of years it existed. To understand this, we need to imagine Pangaea not just as one giant flat expanse of land, but as a complex continent with mountains, rivers, deserts, forests, and coastal plains, each offering different opportunities and challenges for life. In the north, parts of Pangaea were close to what we now call the Arctic, and these areas experienced colder temperatures, seasonal changes, and long periods of darkness during the winter months. In contrast, the equatorial regions near the center of the supercontinent were warm and humid, with extensive river systems, swamps, and lush vegetation that could support a wide range of plant-eating animals. Moving south, the land extended toward regions that were cooler and drier, with deserts and open plains forming vast stretches of semi-arid land. The result was that dinosaurs living in different parts of Pangaea faced very different environmental pressures, and these pressures shaped the way they evolved, producing an astonishing range of forms, sizes, and behaviors. One of the most important factors in the evolution of diversity was the way food resources were distributed across Pangaea. In the lush equatorial regions, where rainfall was more abundant and rivers created fertile valleys, dinosaurs had access to a wide variety of plants, from low-lying ferns to tall conifers. Herbivorous dinosaurs, or plant eaters, evolved in many different directions to take advantage of these resources. Some developed long necks, allowing them to reach the tops of trees, while others had specialized teeth or beaks for stripping leaves or grinding tough plant material. In areas where vegetation was more sparse, such as the drier inland regions or the edges of deserts, herbivores had to be more efficient in their feeding, evolving tougher digestive systems, larger bodies to store food energy, or the ability to travel long distances in search of food. These adaptations not only allowed dinosaurs to survive in different environments, but also led to the emergence of entirely new species adapted to specific ecological niches. For example, in the northern regions with seasonal forests, dinosaurs may have developed migratory behaviors to follow the availability of food, while in the stable, humid tropics, species could become more sedentary, exploiting the abundance of plants year-round. Carnivorous dinosaurs, or meat-eaters, were also heavily influenced by the diversity of environments. In regions with large herbivores, predators evolved to become larger, faster, or more cunning, developing adaptations such as sharp claws, powerful jaws, and keen senses to hunt effectively. In areas where prey was smaller or more dispersed, smaller, agile carnivores could thrive, using speed and intelligence to catch their meals. The result was a complex web of predator-prey relationships, where the presence of certain herbivores could drive the evolution of specific carnivorous adaptations, and vice versa. This back-and-forth evolutionary pressure, known as co-evolution, created a dynamic and constantly changing ecosystem, leading to the rise of numerous dinosaur species with specialized traits suited to their local environments. Pangaea's enormous size also meant that physical barriers could develop within the supercontinent, even though it was connected as one landmass. Mountain ranges, rivers, and deserts could act as natural boundaries, isolating populations of dinosaurs from one another. Over time, this geographic isolation allowed these populations to evolve independently, producing new species in a process called allopatric speciation. For example, a group of herbivores living on one side of a mountain range might slowly evolve into a species with longer legs for traveling across open plains, while a similar group on the other side could develop stronger jaws for chewing tougher plants. Although they originated from the same ancestral population, the environmental differences on each side of the barrier led to the evolution of distinct species. This process happened repeatedly across Pangaea, helping to create a rich tapestry of dinosaur diversity across the continent. The climate of Pangaea itself contributed further to this diversity. Unlike the modern continents, Pangaea had a vast interior that was far from the moderating influence of oceans. As a result, The central regions of the supercontinent were subject to extreme temperatures, with hot summers and cold winters, and periods of drought that could last for months. Dinosaurs living in these harsh interior regions had to develop adaptations for surviving in such conditions. Some species evolved tough, scaly skin to reduce water loss, while others became larger in size to store more energy and maintain body heat. Behavioral adaptations, such as burrowing, nocturnal activity, or seasonal migrations, may have also been crucial for survival. In contrast, coastal regions of Pangaea experienced milder climates and more stable rainfall, allowing a different set of species to thrive. These coastal dinosaurs might have had less need for extreme physical adaptations, instead evolving traits that favored speed, social behavior, or specialized feeding strategies. The diversity of climates, therefore, created a kind of natural laboratory in which dinosaurs could experiment with different forms and behaviors, ultimately producing an incredible variety of species across the supercontinent. The evolution of diversity on Pangaea was also influenced by the timing of its existence. Pangaea came together gradually over millions of years, starting around 320 million years ago during the late Carboniferous period and reaching its full size by the middle of the Triassic period, roughly 225 million years ago. During this long process, dinosaurs were emerging from small, fast, and adaptable ancestors, and the formation of a single, continuous landmass allowed them to spread into new areas and explore new ecological opportunities. As they dispersed, different populations encountered unique environmental conditions, from dense forests to open plains, from humid tropics to dry deserts. Each of these conditions acted as a selective pressure, guiding the evolution of new traits and eventually producing a wide array of dinosaur species. By the late Triassic period, roughly 210 million years ago, dinosaurs were already beginning to show significant diversity, with early examples of both herbivorous and carnivorous forms adapting to different ecological niches across Pangaea. Water availability played another crucial role in shaping dinosaur diversity. Even though Pangaea was one continuous landmass, it contained a complex network of rivers, lakes, and coastal regions that provided habitats for both terrestrial and semi-aquatic species. Dinosaurs living near water sources could access abundant food and shelter, leading to the evolution of species that relied heavily on aquatic or semi-aquatic ecosystems. In contrast, species in arid regions had to adapt to the scarcity of water, developing strategies to conserve moisture or travel long distances to reach rivers and lakes. These environmental differences reinforced the separation of populations and encouraged the evolution of specialized traits suited to local conditions. For instance, dinosaurs in swampy regions might evolve longer limbs or specialized feet for moving through soft, muddy ground, while those in dry areas might develop thicker skin or specialized respiratory systems to cope with heat and dehydration. Vegetation type and availability were also key factors driving diversity. During the Triassic and Jurassic periods, the plant life of Pangaea was dominated by conifers, cycads, ginkgos, and ferns, with flowering plants appearing later during the Cretaceous period. Different types of plants provided different types of food, and herbivorous dinosaurs had to evolve in response. Some developed long, flexible necks for browsing high trees, while others specialized in eating low-lying ferns or stripping leaves from tough branches. Teeth, jaws, and digestive systems became highly specialized in some groups to extract the maximum nutrition from available plants. Meanwhile, carnivorous dinosaurs evolved in parallel, developing hunting strategies and physical adaptations that allowed them to exploit these herbivores as prey. The interaction between plant availability, herbivore feeding strategies, and carnivore adaptations created a complex and interconnected web of ecological relationships, further promoting the evolution of diversity across the continent. Competition was another important driver of diversity. Even though Pangaea offered many opportunities, the number of ecological niches was not unlimited. As more dinosaur species emerged, they had to compete for food, space, and other resources. This competition drove the evolution of specialized traits that allowed species to reduce direct competition and exploit different resources. For example, two herbivorous species might feed on the same type of plant, but at different heights, or two carnivorous species might hunt different prey or hunt at different times of the day. Such differentiation helped multiple species coexist in the same region while maintaining distinct evolutionary paths. Over millions of years, these subtle differences in diet, behavior, and habitat use accumulated, resulting in a wide variety of species, each uniquely adapted to its local environment. Fossil evidence supports the idea that Pangaea's environmental diversity led to the evolution of many distinct dinosaur lineages. Paleontologists have discovered fossils of early dinosaurs and their relatives in regions that were once far apart on Pangaea, showing a range of sizes, shapes, and lifestyles. For example, fossils found in what is now South America reveal small, fast-running carnivores, while fossils from North Africa show large, long-necked herbivores adapted to more open landscapes. Even within a single region, different species often occupy different ecological roles, demonstrating how environmental diversity encouraged evolutionary experimentation and specialization. By the time Pangaea began to break apart around 180 million years ago, the supercontinent had already produced a remarkable variety of dinosaurs, setting the stage for further diversification as the continents drifted into separate landmasses during the Jurassic and Cretaceous periods. The separation of Pangaea into smaller continents later amplified this diversity even further. As populations of dinosaurs became isolated on newly forming continents, they continued to evolve independently, giving rise to the incredible range of species seen in the later Mesozoic era. But the initial burst of diversity that began on Pangaea was crucial, as it established the foundation for the wide range of body types, diets, and behaviors that would define the dinosaurs for over 160 million years. Without the unique combination of environmental variation, geographic size, climate differences, and ecological pressures provided by Pangaea, it is unlikely that dinosaurs would have evolved into such a successful and diverse group of animals. Some species developed complex social behaviors, forming herds for protection against predators, while others may have established territorial ranges to defend valuable resources. Nesting behaviors and care for young likely evolved in response to environmental pressures, such as the need to protect eggs from temperature extremes or from predatory threats. In regions with abundant food and mild climates, dinosaurs could invest more energy in reproduction and social interaction, whereas in harsher regions, survival and efficient resource use were more critical. These behavioral adaptations, combined with physical and ecological specializations, contributed to the overall diversity and success of dinosaurs across the supercontinent. Even within a single species, environmental diversity could drive local adaptations. Fossil evidence shows that some species had slightly different forms or sizes depending on the region they inhabited, reflecting how local conditions influenced their evolution. Such intraspecific variation provided a flexible basis for natural selection, allowing populations to respond to changing environmental conditions over time. For instance, a species living near rivers might develop broader feet for moving on muddy banks, while the same species living on dry plains could evolve narrower, more efficient feet for running. These small but significant variations added another layer to the overall diversity of life on Pangaea, demonstrating the intricate interplay between environment, adaptation, and evolution. Pangaea's vast and varied landscapes also influence the timing of evolutionary events. Changes in climate, sea level, and tectonic activity created new habitats and eliminated others, producing waves of opportunity for dinosaur species to expand, adapt, or go extinct. Periods of environmental stability allowed species to specialize and diversify, while periods of change challenged dinosaurs to adapt or risk extinction. This dynamic pattern of environmental fluctuation and adaptation ensured that the evolution of diversity was not a simple, linear process, but a complex and ongoing story of trial, success, and occasional failure. Each region of Pangaea, with its unique combination of challenges and opportunities, contributed to the larger picture of dinosaur evolution, producing a rich and varied ecosystem unlike anything the Earth had seen before.